The political architecture of the American South just fractured under the weight of a March primary that feels more like a final reckoning than a preliminary round. While the nation looks toward November, the real war for Texas has already been fought in the trenches of the GOP runoff and a blockbuster Democratic upset that has sidelined established power players. This isn't just an election, it is a fast-moving shift of the most consequential electoral prize in the Sun Belt. The fight for the Texas ballot didn't begin with digital scanners. It was forged in the aftermath of the 1900 Galveston Hurricane, where the deadliest disaster in United States history forced a total reimagining of how the state governs its people. As the city built a literal seawall to hold back the Gulf, the state's political class began constructing a metaphorical one, designing a primary system that would ensure power remained concentrated far from the reach of a rapidly diversifying electorate. For nearly a century, the white primary and restrictive registration laws acted as a gatekeeper, a legacy that modern reformers and traditionalists still grapple with today in every legislative session. Throughout the 20th century, the human element of this struggle was defined by figures who realized that in Texas, the general election was often a mere formality. The real bloodletting happened in the spring, a tradition of internal party warfare that predates the modern red-blue divide. By the time John F. Kennedy stood at Rice University in 1962 to announce the moon mission, Texas had already cemented its status as a state where political orbits are determined by local machinery and deep-pocketed endorsements, rather than national trends. This historical baseline created a 20-year reality where the winner of the primary was the de facto winner of the office, rendering the November ballot a victory lap for whoever survived the March gauntlet. This stagnation eventually invited the modern disruption we are witnessing, the shift from the tradition of mail-in ballots, a system originally used by soldiers during the Civil War, to the high-tech, high-scrutiny environment of the 2020s, has turned the simple act of voting into a complex legal battlefield. As the state evolved from an agrarian society to a global energy powerhouse, the mechanics of power followed suit. The transition from the rural dominance of the early 1900s to the suburban volatility of the 2020s has stripped away the predictability of the old guard. Now the historical walls are thinning, and the primary system that was once used to ensure stability is now the very engine driving the state's most radical political swings. On the ground, the engine of Texas politics operates through an open primary system, a peculiar mechanism that allows any registered voter to choose their battlefield regardless of party affiliation. While more than 8 million Texans may show up for a gubernatorial general election, the ideological soul of the state is actually decided by the 2.5 million who participate in the primaries, creating a massive leverage point for highly motivated factions. To secure a nomination, a candidate must clear a 50% plus one threshold, a rule that triggered the current 2026 runoff between the state's attorney general and its senior senator. This system is governed by a strict calendar where the deadline to register falls 30 days before the first ballot is cast, and the early voting window, a crucial 2-week period, accounts for the vast majority of the total tally. The process is decentralized across 254 individual counties, each acting as its own sovereign election authority, which creates a complex patchwork of polling locations and varying mail-in ballot rejection rates. This fragmentation means that a candidate's fate often hinges on their ability to navigate the specific local mandates of North Texas suburbs versus the border precincts of the Rio Grande Valley. The current clash pits two rational but irreconcilable visions of election integrity against one another. Advocates for expanded access see the ballot-by-mail system and open primaries as essential tools for a 21st century democracy, pointing to data that shows voter turnout increases by 10% in mail, only jurisdictions without providing a partisan advantage to either side. Their objective is a smooth system that accommodates a mobile, working-class workforce and an aging population, arguing that the cost savings, up to 40% in some jurisdictions, justify the move toward a fully digital or mail-based future. Conversely, critics of the current trajectory operate on the principle of maximum security, fearing that any deviation from in-person day of voting invites systemic vulnerability. Their main prediction is not necessarily widespread fraud, but a dilution of party identity where crossover voters from the opposing party can raid a primary to select the weakest possible opponent for the general election. They view the movement toward more flexible voting as a threat to the traditional mandate, seeking to tighten the excuse requirements for mail-in ballots to ensure that every vote is cast under the highest possible level of physical scrutiny. The impending fallout of the 2026 results will likely be settled in the courts long before the November winners are inaugurated, as a new wave of litigation targets the thresholds for mail-in ballot signatures. With the May 26th runoff serving as a final stress test for the state's voting infrastructure, Texas is moving toward a reality where the primary is no longer a suggestion, but the definitive final act of governance. The margin for error has evaporated, leaving a state that is no longer just a partisan stronghold, but a volatile laboratory for the future of American power.